Boozed and Confused is a comedy and weird topic podcast. Adult language may be used, probably by me. While our episode topics may be educational in nature, we are not responsible if your children start dropping the F-bomb to their kindergarten class. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everybody.
Hey, take two.
This is Take Two. This is Boozed and Confused. I am Carolanne.
I'm Dad.
And we tried to do this on Sunday, and the executive producer pretty much wouldn't let us. So it's Monday, and we're recording now, and the executive producer is taking a nap.
Yeah, she insisted on having a pizza party. She refuses to offer, health benefits.
Yeah, terrible.
But Fridays are pizza parties.
And we get to wear jeans.
On
casual.
Sundays.
Yeah.
On Sundays,
yeah. It's casual.
Only Sundays, yeah.
Cool. Well, you've got a Matt episode coming up today for those who have listened to my voice for far too long in the pod. But before we get into your topic for today, some housekeeping items.
Yeah, I've been getting rid of the old caulk line in the bathroom. Trying to get a nice new, really thick line.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Some thick caulk in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah.
It's clear, yeah.
Yeah, we pretty much decided because we both go back to work pretty soon after having, the baby. And so it's been gross hot in Chicago. So we thought, what the hell? We should just do all of our house projects while we can before we go back. And yeah, so that's what we're doing with our lives. This is hashtag this is 30.
It's very 30 of you to say hashtag
yeah.
before anything. That was cool 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of, you just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
I don't want to talk about it.
All right, housekeeping items. We're on all your favorite social medias.
You can pre-record this part.
No, I can't.
I swear you can. People do it.
I'm sure they do. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you guys are on Instagram and you make Instagram reels, especially if you're a podcaster, can you just tell me how to do that? Because I know the algorithm changed and they favor the reels because, the TikToks are very popular. So
those kids and their TikToks.
Damn kids and their TikToks. Yeah, I'm struggling, so I'm trying to do that. But if social media isn't your thing, you can reach out to us at boozedandconfusedpodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email of memes or, I don't know, whatever else people email these days.
Yeah,
you could forward me a chain letter from your aunt. Oh, yeah, we did get a suggestion for a topic that we'll do next week. Yep. No spoilers. Yeah. The next item on our housekeeping. If you like the pod and you want to support us, the best way that you could do that is by leaving a review and then subscribing or following just on your platform of choice. It really makes a huge difference, I promise, especially if you listen on any of the Apple platforms, especially if you hear our cat in the background and you want to support him being a bastard that he is. We just don't have time to edit anymore. I'm looking at the executive producer through a baby camera. What do they call those? Just a camera.
Cam.
Yeah, baby cam. And we're just trying to get through this to give the people what they want and deserve. So if you leave us a review, you could take a screenshot and send it to us, and we will send you some Boozed and Confused stickers for free. Doesn't matter where you're located. So what's the last item? What are you drinking?
This is yesterday's whiskey.
Yeah, kind of gross. It's fine. I don't judge.
Yeah.
If it were a beer, I think it would maybe be a little bit grosser.
Yeah, I've had the occasional night where I pour a little bit of whiskey or scotch, and I'm like, I can't finish this.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pour it back in the bottle.
No, that's barbaric.
Yeah, I put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's it. That's it. It's Jameson, by the way. It's Irish whiskey.
Oh, okay.
It's Irish whiskey for an Irish story.
Yeah. Perfect.
This is the one we got on the honeymoon. It's like the distillery blend.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's got my name on the bottle.
It does. That was a bitch to get home.
You know, one day when that bottle's gone, I'm probably going to buy more Jameson and just pour it into that bottle.
Yeah. That makes sense. So without further ado, that was a terrible drum roll. Over to you. What are we talking about today?
This is a bit of a callback to 2 weeks ago.
Hashtag Throwback Thursday.
Stop doing hashtags. I briefly mentioned fairies and changelings. It's pretty much the country folk didn't understand like a disorder, an abnormality, and they would just say, "Oh, that's a changeling. Let's kill it."
Of course, naturally.
Or it would die on its own.
Yeah.
I mentioned Bridget Cleary, a woman who was burned to death in 1895. And this is, well, I said that it could be like a whole pod topic on its own. So here it is.
So we did just that.
Yeah, it was easier that way. You know, you asked me, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, crap.
Oh, shit. Oh,
again.
It's my time again.
We didn't get canceled yet. No, so this is the story of Bridget Cleary. Cleary. I'm going to go with Clary because it rhymes with the word fairy.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. So there's actually this old Irish rhyme. It goes like, are you a witch or are you a fairy or are you the wife of Michael Cleary?
Creepy.
And like you'd like jump
a little
rope
morbid.
to it. You jump rope to it.
Yeah. What asshole kid came up with that? Just want to know.
You know, probably someone who was in the neighborhood.
Uh-huh. Yeah, just wanted to start shit.
Well, this whole event was like a town-wide thing. It was like the neighbors heard what was going on.
Oh, God. Can you imagine if they had social media back then? It'd be like you'd know about it like 2 towns over, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it's all word of mouth. All those spinsters in the countryside.
Oh, God. All right, go ahead.
I saw Miss Clary's ankle. That hussy.
Can you believe it?
Anyways, so yeah, a few weeks ago, myths about babies, because we have one, and I mentioned Bridget Cleary, who was burned to death. He claimed that she was a changeling, a fairy creature left in the place of the real Bridget Cleary. Do we do content warnings?
We do content warnings. This one comes with a content warning.
Okay. Domestic abuse, torture, and of course murder.
And maybe some of you are more eager to listen to today's episode because of that. I don't judge. It's fine.
Well, I've literally been avoiding podcasts that talk about like true crime.
And now you're all in.
And now I'm all in. I started one called Murder in Illinois.
Right.
That one was like 2006-ish.
Yeah.
And then like the Piketon Massacre.
Yeah. That one is wild. That's the one we've been listening to in the car.
Right, with like the warring families and the
Yeah.
babies. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, it's an awful story. Awful story. So, yeah, historically, this event is known as the Clonmel Witch Burning of 1895. And this is mislabeled because the victim, Bridget Cleary, was not accused of witchcraft. She was accused of being a fairy changeling. And to briefly summarize the severity of this charge, just kind of think about the Salem witch trials. Fairies were bad news to the Irish folk. The fairies in the stories have godlike powers. They're essentially immortal, and they have no sense of morality. Like baddies in Irish folklore kind of know they're the baddies, but fairies just don't care.
And that's like Shakespeare. The fairies are all a little Nordy.
A little bit. you wouldn't want to encounter a fairy. People who allegedly ran into fairies often returned disfigured, traumatized, or were never seen again. And that was often kind of like, that's why they stopped coming around. The fairies got them.
I also feel like the word fairies is just a very soft word for like what allegedly happened to these people, but I don't know. He was brutalized by the fairies.
Yeah, so with the severity and the fear of fairies, just being called a changeling or a fairy could ravage your reputation. So with that out of the way, I'm going to jump kind of to the end of the story and then kind of go back to the beginning. So we go to March 15th, 1895, where Bridget Cleary, a 28-year-old woman who was married to a local cooper named Michael Cleary, was reported missing from her cottage near Clonmel in County Tipperary, which is, of course, in Ireland. And this is a particularly superstitious area in Ireland. And so a few days after she was reported missing, her body was found in a shallow grave. She was burned to death by her husband and his family members. So what happened to Bridget Cleary to lead her to such a terrible ending? We're going to go back to the beginning now, like all the way to the beginning. Bridget Cleary was born Bridget Boland around 1869. I couldn't find a date anywhere, but
I feel like that's very common. You see a lot of like older gravestones and they don't say like the actual date. A lot of it is just the year. I noticed that when I was doing a lot of ancestry stuff for myself. I went through a phase.
It's so people can lie about their age.
Yeah.
When they buy booze.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I was born.
That was a big concern back in the 1800s.
I was born around 1869.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, she was born in Ballyvedley, which is in County Tipperary in Ireland. And Tipperary was a especially superstitious area. I think I already said that, but it still stands. In her early life, she worked as a dressmaker, and she was described as a very independent and quite opinionated woman, which is kind of standard now,
IRL.
But it's it's you. But yeah, that is not the best description to have in this time period, especially when you think about like the archaic gender norms of the world. So that's really all I have on her early life. In August of 1887, Bridget met a man named Michael Cleary. So she was 18 then, and he was 27.
Okay. I know.
It's not that crazy.
I mean, it's still kind of gross, the maturity level of an 18-year-old versus a 27-year-old.
What I will say is, though, her marrying at 18, thinking about the time frame, you might think that's normal, but I was listening to an Irish bloke talk about this story, and he said that it was quite uncommon to marry this young. So so he was a cooper, which, what do they make?
Chickens?
Barrels. You don't make chickens. He made barrels.
I just think like chicken coop.
He was a barrel maker.
For the record, I just want to establish I know you don't make chickens.
Keep the chickens in mind, though, because they do come up later in the story. So soon after they met, they were married. And actually, after they were married, they didn't live together for quite a long time. Bridget stayed in Ballyvedley while Michael continued his work coopering in Clonmel. In kind of speaking to her independence, Bridget took to keeping chickens.
Oh.
And she would sell the eggs to neighbors and folks in town to maintain her independence.
How cool is that? I'm an independent woman. I
sell chicken eggs.
I have chickens.
She also managed to get her hands on a Singer sewing machine, which was like state of the art.
Yeah.
At the time, and she worked as a dress designer and a hat maker.
Okay.
So she didn't need no man.
Yeah, no.
And she was doing quite well for herself, apart from Michael. So years pass. Bridget's mother passes away, and Bridget and Michael settle in a laborer's cottage with Bridget's father, Patrick. So a laborer's cottage is essentially like housing only meant for like workers, laborers. Little side story there. Bridget's mother was not a well-loved lady in the community.
She wasn't a chicken lady?
No, she was believed to have been in league with the fairies throughout her life and had been taken many times by the fairies.
So this kind of goes back like way beyond. Okay.
Also, the cottage which they chose to live in was not really a place anyone in town wanted to be around. You see, it was built on a ring fort.
I'm familiar.
Are you?
Yeah, I think that place that we stay at in Galena.
It's like a fairy circle, they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one would dare disturb a ring fort for really any reason. If you were to Google fairy ring fort, and my phone goes off, it might help you out to get a visual. Oh, thanks, Google.
Google's going off in the background.
Thanks,
I don't know
Google.
if you can hear it.
When I really want to use it, it never answers.
Yeah, it never works.
Yeah, it's awful. But ring forts are these like circular encampments of like bushes, trees, stones, and they were believed to be imbued with druids' magic. And these ring forts were like treacherous to tread upon or to disturb. Like farmers won't touch a ring fort if it's on their property, and you know how farmers are with their property.
Yes.
Like, this is my property. I'm going to do everything I want with it. If you park in front of my gate, I'm going to flip your car.
Yeah. Yeah. As they should.
But yeah, all things considered, Michael and Bridget were a relatively happy couple. They were extremely well off compared to their neighbors, thanks to the extra work that Bridget did, even though it was kind of taboo-ish to be independent from the husband. And over their years of marriage, they never had kids.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So on March 4th, 1895, this is kind of when things get rolling and we kind of get to the end of the story. So March 4th, she has 11 days left of life. So March 4th, she goes on one of her egg deliveries, or she's going to collect egg money. I'm not sure which.
Rolling in that egg money.
Yeah, she was. So she was either giving eggs or getting egg money from this man named Jack Dunn. This was her father's cousin. He was definitely related to her in some cousin way like that. And this was, I'm going to maul this, Carolanne Hill.
Yeah, it sounds legit.
Which is another infamous location for ring forts. And so it was a cold day, and there was still snow on the high points, and it was a long walk. So like they say, I used to walk uphill both ways in the snow
to get my egg money.
Well, she came back home and she couldn't get warm. She got home and ended up spending the next day in bed shivering and complaining of this awful pain in her head. So naturally, her father, who still lived with her, left to call for a doctor, but the doctor wasn't available for a number of days. And so as time passed, Bridget was diagnosed with, quote, nervous excitement and slight bronchitis.
What is nervous excitement?
I don't know. It's one of those things that doctors in the old days said
just made
people
up.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah. However,
it sounds like me IRL when I'm like really anxious about something.
WebMD. So despite this report from the doctor, Michael Cleary was not so sure. And so if I quote anything, this is real quotes. It's actual, like, well, we'll get to it, but there's actual, like, written out dialogue of people's interactions. Michael said that his wife was, quote, too fine to be his wife, and that she appeared to be 2 inches taller than when she had left.
Oh.
And so while his wife stayed sick in bed, Michael began fearing that his wife had been replaced by a fairy.
So when he says too fine to be my wife, it doesn't mean like, oh, I married up. It just means like since she's gotten back, she doesn't look the same.
So again, this is one of those quotes, and I'm going to assume from how I understand the phrase, like she looked too good, right? I don't know. So he believes that she was replaced by a fairy changeling while she was out doing her egg work near the fairy fort on Kylanagra Hill, which is where she was going. And to make things worse, Jack Dunn, the man that she was selling eggs to, was also a local Shawnee or Slavine. Honestly spent like 10 minutes looking this word up to get like the right pronunciation. So sorry, Ireland. I should keep my mouth shut more often.
Yeah.
Look, like I looked at that part, but that guy in the bathroom at the pub in Doolin, he was right. He was right. Yeah. I looked the part.
When you get the cap on.
I looked the part. Yeah. Oh yeah. So a Shawnee Slavine, I think I'm just going to call it like a Slavine from now on, is kind of known as a, quote, bearer of old lore or a storyteller. However, like in the old world, kind of like a witch doctor almost, like they have this knowledge of the other. And Jack Dunn was thought to have like powers of divination, and he was particularly well versed with fairies. And so it seems he was the one who was egging on Michael to believe that his wife's condition was due to fairies.
Oh, okay.
See that egg? Egg him on? Eggs?
Oh, I'm leaving now.
That's a pun.
Our executive producer can take it from here.
So Jack Dunn was actually brought to the house to see Bridget, and he was said to have whispered, "That is not Bridget Boland." And so this further confirms Michael's concerns. The sick Bridget Cleary was not Bridget at all. She was, in fact, a fairy changeling. And so in this time in Ireland and in this kind of like rural area, you have a very strong mixture of Christianity as well as like the old religion, like the old like earth religion. So they call a priest in, and he gives her her last rites, just in case things get worse. All the while, Michael keeps speaking with Jack Dunn, and Jack suggests that Michael go to another local fairy doctor, a Slavine, named Dennis Gainey. So Michael goes to Gainey, and he returns with a mixture of herbs, which he needed to boil them in the milk of a cow that had just given birth, and then give this concoction to Bridget.
How do people come up with this shit? I just want to know.
It's like that rope thing with the babies, and the what's her name? Like the night woman.
The what?
Our baby story from 2 weeks ago. take the rope, get it wet,
yeah,
whip it around, only on Thursdays.
It's like that episode of SpongeBob where he's like trying to make the bubbles. He's like, first you do this, and then you do this.
Stop on your right knee. Don't forget it. So the damnedest thing, one of the herbs most likely contained in this concoction was foxglove. Foxglove was thought to be very poisonous against fairies. But if you know what foxglove is, you would know that it's just straight up poison. Like you can't ingest it. It's very toxic to people.
Is that what we saw at Home Depot? And you're like, oh, this is poison.
Yes.
The color. It's a paint color. Not Home Depot's not selling poison. Well, I
they
mean,
probably
if you drink
sell
the
foxglove.
paint,
It's a very pretty flower.
Yeah.
So that night, Michael forces this concoction down his wife's throat while Jack Dunn and 3 male cousins pin her down in the bed.
Yeah, sounds legit. Super legit.
Michael shuts the windows, covers them up, locks the doors because he was like basically yelling, there are fairies in this house. And he didn't want anything to get out. And so people outside could hear like everything that was going on.
Awkward.
And so, again, this is a real quote. People heard Michael shouting, "Take it, you bitch, or we will burn you."
Okay, so Michael's actually kind of... I mean, not that you needed to hear that to know Michael's kind of a dick, but...
Right, but no, it gets worse. So you know it's Michael, Jack, and some cousins. The men began to throw urine at Bridget, and they were shaking her, saying, "Away with you! Come home, Bridget Boland, in the name of God."
Oh my! Okay, why the urine though?
Right?
Yeah, right.
That's
that was our
disgusting.
executive producer. I don't know if that'll pick up, but
Pee goes in diapers, not on people. The producer is right. So other relatives and neighbors came and went, witnessing this ordeal and hearing her screams, but they were all too scared to intervene. So Michael then asks his wife to answer to her name 3 times. "Are you Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God?" And like the men pick her up out of bed and they bring her to the fireplace and they hold her over the grates. Because, of course, ordeals of fire were known to drive out fairies. While they were repeating this question, are you Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God? And so by the end of this event, Bridget has burn marks on her face. She's burned with a red-hot poker and was held over the flames for quite a long time by these men. And so by midnight on that Thursday night, they believed the ritual to have been completed.
it was definitely the urine that finished it off.
Oh, absolutely. So by the end of this, Bridget was, again, this is a quote, was wild and deranged.
Yeah, I would be too if somebody threw their piss on me. And then, also the part about the fire and everything.
Yeah.
But this poor woman, oh my God.
And these words were used by her cousin Joanna, who was present for a lot of this. Her husband seemed satisfied, and the other men who were around thought that the job was done. So this is the following morning. At Michael's request, he asks a priest to say mass in the bedroom where Bridget was in order to banish the evil spirits that were left in the house. And on Friday, March 15th, for the first time in 11 days, Bridget gets out of bed, gets dressed. Again, her cousin said she got dressed in a fashionable way to, quote, give her courage when she would go among the people. Several family members had joined them in the cottage for tea, and this was all kind of interrupted by arguments. This is because Bridget asked her husband for milk.
Oh, no.
And although he was pretty happy with the torture he put her through last night, thinking that had exorcised the fairies, her asking for milk had rekindled Michael's suspicions.
What is it about milk, though?
Because fairies in folklore are known to love fresh milk. Milk. And so Bridget was most likely, after the ordeal she went through, entirely exhausted. She didn't want to be questioned anymore. And so she comments to her husband, "Your mother used to go with the fairies, and that is why you think I am going with them."
Oh, shit. It's always the mother-in-law's fault.
But this sends Michael off. Again, saying someone's a fairy is like saying someone's a witch in Salem. Michael was furious. He demanded that she eat 3 pieces of bread and jam, possibly to reinforce his control over her, asking her to say her name each time she ate the bread. And so she answers only twice, and only ate 2 pieces of the 3 given to her. And so when she stopped for the 3rd one, Michael throws her to the ground and threatens her, "If you won't take it down, down you will go." And so Michael essentially kneels on her chest and forces the bread and jam down his wife's throat. He begins tearing her clothes off, leaving her only in her undergarments. He then grabs a hot stick from the fire and holds it close to her mouth. He strikes her head against the floor again and again, and then he sets her undergarments on fire.
What a giant piece of shit. This poor woman. I feel so bad for this poor woman.
Mind you, her family's in the room.
Right.
Like, there's family in the room. A few minutes later, he then grabs an oil lamp and pours the oil over her to basically engulf her in flames.
This is horrific.
Yeah. So as she's burning, Michael yells in front of her relatives, "This is not my wife. She's an old deceiver sent in place of my wife." And this was, left in response. Relatives were yelling at Michael to put the flames out. But by then, Bridget had gone ablaze. And according to their later testimony, they were huddled in fear from Michael in a bedroom as the flames actually blocked their way out of the room.
So he's just trying to take everybody with him.
Well, no, he has to use them for something later.
Oh, good. Great.
So once the flames died down, Michael wraps her body in a sheet and shoves the body in this old, bag. He leaves the house then, locking the entire family inside the cottage with the corpse of Bridget Cleary.
Oh, my God. Okay, first of all, worst party ever. But second of all, what a piece of shit.
And so they say they waited for about an hour, and they were all praying. And Michael returns about an hour later. He was wielding a knife, and he threatened to kill Bridget's cousins if they didn't help him bury her body. He said, "Come on out here now. I have the hole nearly made." And so one of the cousins, Patrick Kennedy, and Michael Cleary carry the body to a boggy area about a quarter mile uphill from the cottage, and they buried Bridget in a shallow hole.
This poor woman. Oh, my God.
When the 2 men returned, Michael then made the family swear that they would not tell the authorities. Sure enough, on March 16th, rumors began circulating that Bridget had gone missing.
Yeah, loose quotes there.
And so police, or whatever they had the equivalent of, began looking for her.
I believe there it's the Garda.
Right.
The Garda.
The Garda. I don't know if they were called that back in 1895. Maybe they were.
Maybe.
In America, the Garda is like a money moving company.
Yes.
They've got armored tanks,
yeah.
and they drive around. They're pretty cool. So authorities began questioning friends and relatives for the next few days, all while Michael said he had hoped his real wife would come back. And it is said that Michael waited at the ring fort at Carolanne for 3 nights, claiming he believed the real Bridget would reappear there.
Do you think by like night 3 he was maybe like, oh shit,
Did I mess up?
Was that Bridget?
Did I mess up?
Did I,
was that Bridget?
But
she was 2 inches taller.
And she was too fine.
Right. So on March 20th, arrest warrants were issued for 8 people linked to the disappearance. 2 days later, Bridget Cleary's body was found buried in a shallow grave. I actually found real material documenting this event. It was located in Michael J. McCarthy's 5 Years in Ireland, 1895 to 1900. And this is an actual quote from, I believe, one of the morticians or one of the officers who was on the case. And so this is all actual dialogue. It was the next day, Friday, 22nd March, that Sergeant Rogers, keen on the scent, went crossing some furzy ground, noticed some broken thorn bushes freshly cut from a hedge in an angle of a hill. And there, under a shallow covering of clay, only a few inches deep, the body of poor Bridget Cleary was discovered at a spot considerably over a mile from the cottage. It presented a most terrible appearance, back and lower part all burned, but head preserved and features perfect. Marvelous preservation. There was no clothing on the body except stockings. Her head was enveloped in a sack, and in her left ear was one of her gold earrings. Her limbs were cramped up, her arms folded across her breast. I shall not give the gruesome description of the doctors who made the post-mortem, how the muscles of the spine were burned and the bones exposed and so forth, and the deadly purple marks of strangulation, with others too horrible to mention. Suffice it to say, the burns were cause of death, which was all the coroner's jury wanted to know. So, yeah, it's awful. And they do it so elegantly.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, I don't want to say poetic in the way that they write it, but it's maybe elegant is a much better word for that.
It's the way of writing in the period. So following the discovery of the body, legal hearings ran from April 1st to the 6th, 1895, but the court sessions began on July 3rd. Evidence showed that on March 15th, Michael summoned Father Ryan to the Cleary household. Father Ryan's the one who gave last rites, and he found her alive but agitated. Michael Cleary told the priest that he had not been giving his wife the medicine prescribed by the doctor because he had no faith in it.
Oh, yeah, but burning your wife alive is definitely a much better option.
Right. And so according to Father Ryan, Cleary then said, people may have some remedy of their own that might do more good than doctor's medicine, or something to that effect. Bridget was given communion, and Father Ryan departed. Later that night, neighbors and relatives returned to the Cleary house. An argument ensued, again tinged with the fairy issue. And at some point, Bridget told Michael that the only person who'd gone off with the fairies was his mother, and he then force-fed his wife, threw her on the ground, burned her, and then she caught fire, and he doused oil on her. So the witnesses were unclear as to whether she was already dead at this point, but Michael kept the others back from her body as it burned, insisting that she was a changeling and had been for a week previously, and that he would get his wife back from the fairies. And part of the trial, the jury who was, listening to the case was brought to a storage building where they kept the body of Bridget as she was waiting to be buried. And It was available for viewing, and the jury were given the opportunity to see the condition of the body and the horrible injuries she had received, as well as to personally verify that the body was indeed hers by looking at her face. The gruesome images that the jury saw convinced them that Michael was responsible for the horrible suffering Bridget endured prior to her death. So Michael Cleary was found guilty of manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 20 years of prison time. And so he spent 15 of those 20 years at Mayborough Prison and was released on April 28th, 1910. Following this leaving of prison, he moved to Liverpool, where he quickly emigrated to Montreal, where he essentially vanishes from all records. And that is the tragic story of Bridget Cleary.
Okay, well, that was horrifying, and I feel terrible for Bridget, and I am also very intrigued. But that was maybe a little bit darker than some of our episodes usually go or have recently gone. So thanks for tuning in this week. Thanks for bearing with us while we're a little bit behind because we're still trying to figure out how to be podcasters and parents. Maybe that's a new pod that will start as podcasters and parents. But yeah, we'll see you next week. And next week, don't forget to tune in because we have a listener submitted request for a topic. So looking forward to it. Okay, bye.